really excited about this next panel because it involves two people that I know extremely well and respect enormously. Mark Wilson is the CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and Chad Loar is the PNC Bank Regional President for West and Central Florida. You see, if you've heard me talk about early childhood education in the last few years, I've been pretty evangelical on the idea that the business community really needs to be at the center of the policy pushes that we're making for early childhood education. Because if you think about it, those children who are in our third grade classrooms today, those children will be the workforce that we are preparing for 2030. And what's so beautiful about what's happening in Florida is people like Mark Wilson and Chad Loar and their respective organizations understand this imperative. In 2019, the Florida Chamber Foundation came to the children's movement and said, we want to have 100% of children kindergarten ready by 2030. So we looked at where we are today. And currently in Florida, only 53% of children who are entering our K-12 system are deemed ready to be there. So what does that actually mean? Well, with about 220,000 children going into public school every single year, that means about 85 to 90,000 children are going into our system not ready to be there. And as the husband of a former kindergarten teacher, I know what that means firsthand. It means that we've gone from teaching to remediation. We've gone from teaching to triaging. And that can't be our approach for public education reform. What I like so much about what Mark and Chad bring to this conversation is their focus on understanding how the business community can be involved and how implementing family-friendly business policies can not only improve loyalty and productivity in a corporation, but also increase outcomes for Florida's children. So everyone, I'd ask that you join me today in welcoming both Chad Loar and Mark Wilson, who are both members of our Bosses for Babies family, and I'll ask Mark to talk a little bit about that today.
All right, well, Vance, thanks so much. Chad, I see that you're there as well. Vance, what I wanted to do first of all, I want to welcome everybody to this incredible program today. And I want to start by thanking the Children's Movement of Florida first for just what you do day in and day out. But I really want to thank you for putting this program together. I can't think of any upsides to the COVID pandemic, but if there was one, it would be that adults have all come together to understand how important children are, especially our early learners. And what I hope we can do in the few minutes that we have here today is just long-term perspective. And then I want to introduce Chad. Actually, I'm going to interview Chad today from PNC Bank. Long-term perspective here in Florida. I serve as the president of Florida's Chamber of Commerce, and one of our top roles is to find ways to unite Florida's business community for good. And we can think of no higher calling than to organize our business community in a way that's never happened before, to really focus the tip of the spear on early learning. And Vance shared with you that only 53% of our kindergartners are ready for kindergarten when we get there. I also want to thank Kim Reckley, also of PNC Bank. Kim chairs the Florida Chamber Foundation's Business Alliance for Early Learning, and we're very focused on third grade reading and third grade outcomes. And as we all know, 58% of our third graders in Florida can read proficiently at third grade. And our goal is 100% of third graders reading proficiently by 2030. I simply want to ask all of the Florida Chamber members who have dialed in today, if you're not financially supporting the Children's Movement of Florida, if you haven't found ways to engage locally in what the Children's Movement is doing to organize your county, your local chambers, your economic development groups, please figure out a way to do that. Make it your New Year's resolution. We can't get to 100% of our kindergartners ready for kindergarten if we're not all in it together and if we're not all supporting the Children's Movement. So Vance, what you and Madeline and Dave Lawrence and the whole team are doing is really nothing short of amazing. And I appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciated what Nicole said and the Admiral said, and certainly Senator Ausley and Representative Latfalla as well. What I wanted to do here is introduce Chad to you, Chad Loar from PNC Bank. Chad is the bank's regional president for West and Central Florida. So think about Naples, sort of, Chad, all the way up to Tallahassee, right?
Yes, sir.
And what I also want you to think about when I'm going to ask Chad to introduce himself, and then I want to ask him some questions. But many people don't know that PNC Bank across the country has put their money and their resources and their time where their mouth is. They're investing over $500 million in their early learning initiative. It's called Grow Up Great. Chad is also the father of two young boys, 5 and 6. He lives in Treasure Island. Chad, I want you to introduce yourself quickly, and then I want to get to our questions, but I wanted to lay the predicate that PNC Bank has been at this for a long time. I serve as national chair of our National Association of State Chambers, and we talk about PNC on our national calls when we talk about early learning in a company that's really put their resources, in what they believe in. It's you and it's PNC Bank, and I think a lot of other companies are trying to follow your lead. Here in Florida, we have 871,000 kids who are living in poverty. That's about 21%, and we want to knock that number in half in 10 years. And you heard Vance talk about the early learning numbers, and I talked about the third grade reading numbers. You can't separate these issues, right? They're all so interconnected. And I think to have legislative leaders and business leaders and nonprofit leaders finally focusing on, how do we finally solve all of these issues at once? Every issue has a time. And I think that early learning has found its time. And I'm incredibly bullish on the next couple of years, especially with Vance and Aaron Grawl in the leadership in Tallahassee. So, Chad, I gave a little bit of your background, but would you tell us a little bit more about you? And then I want to use the balance of our time to ask you some important questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mark, and thank you all for those on the line, and thanks for having me today. I think you did a great job, Mark. Good summary. I'm the regional president for PNC Bank. I've been here for PNC for almost 8 years now. We at PNC have been in this market for almost 10 years. So I cover the west coast of Florida and all of Central Florida, the I-4 corridor over to Daytona. Been to the Tampa Bay area. This is where I live. You mentioned Treasure Island. Been in the Tampa Bay area almost 20 years. Married to a circuit court judge here in Pinellas County, and 2 young boys. And grew up in Central Florida, in the Winter Haven, Lakeland, Polk County area. So Florida is my home, and happy to be here and happy to have this initiative we're talking about today. So thank you.
All right. Well, Chad, let me jump right into the deep end then.
Sure.
I'm getting a little bit of feedback, but I'll assume the team will straighten that out. Big picture, right? If we think about it, we need to create about 2 million more jobs in Florida over the next 10 years. And so, said differently, our early learners today are literally going to be our earners, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so the business community sees a direct connection to fully vesting and investing early. Obviously, I mentioned that PNC Bank is obviously a national leader, not just here in Florida, in high quality early learning. Can you share with our participants today, what does that mean? What is your approach? And why is it so important to the bank's leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I actually started PNC about 16 years ago, or a little bit more than 16 years ago. Our then chairman at PNC, Jim Loar, was extremely focused on the bank's philanthropic efforts, really in order to maximize the impact on those communities we serve. So he tasked the team to find really the root cause of a family's failure to succeed. And it was around this time, researchers reflecting about 85% of brain development in children occurs in the first 3 years, as previous speakers have been speaking about. And a well-known and reported economist, James Hickman, placed a 10 to 13% on return of investment for funding early childhood education. And actually went on to say that this ROI is proven in decreasing the need for remedial education later on in schooling, less need for juvenile justice programs, and surprisingly fewer jail cells. So as a result of this, as an outcome, 16 plus years ago, PNC formed the Pnc Foundation and built, as you mentioned earlier, our Grow Up Great early childhood learning program with Sesame Workshop and Fred Rogers Company to meet this need. And at the time as well, when we built this Grow Up Great program, focusing on, again, early childhood learning from birth to age 5, we committed $350 million to this program. And then just recently, 2 years ago, increased that to $500 million. So what we've learned about this Grow Up Great program for us, Mark, it also ties in to our concern for our own employees' health and financial wellness of our PNC families. So it's greatly enhanced over this last 16 years. It's greatly enhanced our family-friendly corporate programs and policies here at PNC, and to help us build out more of a robust living well platform that advises our employees on their health, money, life, other beneficial programs such as that. So early childhood learning has become truly an integral part of PNC corporate social responsibility, and we believe should continue to prove over time a best-in-class prepared workforce.
So Chad, thank you for that. I want to quickly ask a related question to that. So you personally have done what we are hoping a lot of business leaders do, is you got involved in Grow Up Great before you had kids. And so we're increasingly seeing business leaders through the Children's Movement's Bosses for Babies programs and other programs get involved in classrooms and early learning, even if they don't have kids in those classrooms. And that's a relatively new development in the business community. So how has Grow Up Great impacted you personally? And if you could work into your answer, Chad, think about grandparents and think about parents who no longer have kids in the early learning years. You know, how does all of this still work? How can people get involved?
It's a good question. I mean, personally, and I think everyone on this phone call here is obviously on because they have a soft spot for children, and at the end of the day, I've always believed that every child should get a fair shake at it. And previous to coming to PNC about 8 years ago, really understanding our Grow Up Great program and how, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, really how PNC is the trendsetter and the leader in this. I was on 2 different philanthropic boards in this Tampa Bay area that were focused, on children orientation. One being, the Pediatric Cancer Foundation, and then another I was on the Tampa Bay YMCA, and it was actually on the YMCA board about 10 plus years ago when I learned those kids falling behind in 3rd grade. If they're not reading at 3rd grade level, that it's going to be extremely challenging and difficult for that child to catch up. And it was just shocking for me when I learned that, being on the YMCA. And I've participated in Big Brothers before, things like that. So I guess it's just a soft spot that I've always endured. But speaking how it relates to PNC, when I came here 8 years ago, it's our program and early childhood learning and wanting to focus on that is extremely transparent here internally. I think it speaks to our business model. All of our employees are different lines of businesses. We work alongside our team that basically makes sure that we walk and talk with our communities. And it's dominated by the Grow Up Great program here at PNC. It's easy for our employees to embrace it and be, cultivated in what they do. So within my first year, to answer your question about me personally, within the first year, it was easy and natural for me to learn what we're doing. How can I be a part of it? We have a website dedicated to just early childhood learning here at PNC for any and all of our 52,000 employees to be able to go and navigate through and say, how can I participate? We actually have every April our annual Great Day, and Great Day is the opportunity for our employees to volunteer, and we get a good portion of them to go on site to a low to moderate income child care facility, and we bring laptops, books, different types of school supplies for not just the child but also the teachers. As noted with previous speakers, it's important for them.
Right.
And we provide snacks and food, so it's just a fun day. So it's very, very ingrained in the culture here of early childhood learning, and it's not just myself who got involved, but all of us. But it was cool that I got involved before I had my two boys.
Right.
Now it's made me, I think, more astute to my own children's development and really understanding, when they went from 2 to 3 to 4, now 5 and 6, and kind of watching that and ensure that I'm reading to my kids every night, at least my wife or I are, and how much more if you read to your child, it truly elevates that child's mind and opportunity long term, as we've learned. And I did not know that until I came.
Right. Well, Chad, thank you for that. I want to make last question, and then we need to turn this back over to Vance. You have you're not only serving on our board on the Business Alliance for Early Learning and doing all your work at PNC Bank. Could you share with everyone, sort of as a closing thought, and then we'll turn it back over to Vance. If we had more businesses talking to their employees, their vendors, their families about the importance of early learning, quality early learning, whether it's investments or time, how do you pitch other businesses on getting engaged? If you could answer that question, and then Vance, I know you're listening, maybe when Chad completes, maybe you can take back over again. And again, thanks to the children's movement for this opportunity for me and for Chad to talk about the importance of early learning. But Chad, how do you get other people involved? How do you sell it?
Yeah, good question. I find myself when I'm out there talking to, peers of myself, about this initiative, really kind of asking them, or giving them three advice points, asking them three things. One is, instill or potentially update a family friendly policy within your company. Two is use your influence. And three, we're taught as young kids not to be a bully, but I think it'd be a bully, at times may help. And I'll elaborate on each of these three real quick, what I mean. But the first one, I've become recently affiliated, obviously, with the Bosses for Babies, as you mentioned. That publicizes my personal commitment to the family-friendly practices, part of the PNC culture. You think about it, predictable schedules, remote work options, childcare subsidies, paid family leave. They can all improve your workforce productivity and enhance the bottom line. And this is what I share with my peers. So I would encourage all the CEOs in attendance here today to sign on. Number two, as we know, CEOs, presidents, they sit on board positions, and they sit in board positions in their community, particularly those such as the chambers of commerces, the economic development agencies, and advocacy groups. Recently, I'm the newly seated chair of the Tampa Bay Partnership, and within their own talent development committee, they're starting to look at the root cause that impedes any kind of future availability of talent. So they're starting to explore, with the help of PNC and others, early childhood education. So I ask those CEOs, use your influence, make others aware of this fundamental need to focus on this initiative. And then lastly, a little kind of being a bully, not really, but use that pulpit that you have along with other CEOs to be an advocate with your legislators, your state legislators, your federal legislators, to make sure Florida's competitive in this, and address this early childhood learning now as soon as possible. So those are the three things I find myself talking to my peers about and how they could get involved.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Mark.
Gentlemen, thank you both. Mark, always great to see you. Chad, I'll be speaking to the Tampa Bay Partnership tomorrow morning, so I'll see you in about 24 hours. But again, just so grateful for the role that each of you have played in this conversation, and the importance that the business community has in our war for early childhood. So thank you. So the next part of this, there's some interactivity. We're more than halfway through the summit. Thank you so much for all of you staying on. We have an incredible board member named Ron Sachs. Many of you know him. And one of the things that Ron offered to our organization was to help us conduct a poll of 1,000 parents across the state of Florida, working parents with children under the age of 9, to understand what family-friendly business policies they were seeing in their workplace, and what they felt, what policies they felt lent themselves to a loyalty to the company, to productivity, and that they truly valued. So I'm going to share the initial findings from this poll, but before we get started, I want all of you to participate. So if the technology gods are on our side, you should be getting a survey right now. There are 3 questions. Please go ahead and answer all 3 questions. You'll have to scroll down. And we'll see if the answers from this group are consistent with what we saw from the more than 1,000 parents that we have spoken to currently. So the poll should have just popped up on your page. So as you can see here, we've already conducted the poll with this. We've currently done more than 1,000 at this point, but it was done over 3 days with a 95% confidence level. Next slide, please. So we asked people what were the business-friendly policies that they felt were most valuable to them, and had childcare impacted their ability to participate in the workforce. And as you can see from this slide, 60% of the parents that we surveyed said that they had issues with childcare that had somehow impacted their ability to participate in the workforce. As you see on the right-hand side, 71% had to limit work hours, 47% had to turn down travel as part of their work requirements. 31% had to quit the job, had to quit a job because of childcare. And you know what's worth noting is of the 60% that we saw of respondents who had said childcare had impacted their ability to participate in the workforce, when you really dig deep into the data, we saw that For African American and Black respondents, that number jumped from 60% to 72%. And for individuals making under $50,000, we saw that number jump from 60% to 78%. So clearly, you are seeing a disproportionate impact on communities of color, families making under $50,000, and some of the additional data that we've seen is that we've seen a greater impact on mothers in the workforce. So next slide, please. As you can imagine, COVID-19 has totally turned our world upside down. And what we have seen is that prior to the pandemic, the conversation around whether or not childcare was impacting people's ability to participate in the workforce was at 44%. In the 6 months since the pandemic started, we see that number jump to 65%. So clearly, childcare has become an even more pressing issue with so many of our families across the state. Next slide, please. So we asked the respondents what were the policies that they experienced in their workplace that they felt were the most valuable, and these are the top four answers: paid time off, paid family leave, flexibility of work hours, something that we're seeing more of now with the pandemic, and number four, health insurance. Next slide, please. Now, one of the arguments that we've made as an organization in engaging with the Florida Chamber of Commerce is that it's actually good business practices for corporations to implement family-friendly business policies. In a world where people question the loyalty of millennial workers and question productivity, what we're seeing here is a lot of these family-friendly business policies where you're allowing people to have a better balance of work and life are oftentimes directly correlated with both loyalty and productivity. So on the loyalty end, we're seeing number one, health insurance, two, paid time off, three, flexibility, and four, paid family leave. Next slide, please. And then for productivity, again, these were the top four answers we've seen. Again, not surprising, one of the things we've seen through the pandemic is that with remote working, you're actually seeing an increase in productivity. But number one, flexibility, two, paid time off, three, backup childcare assistance, and four, on-site childcare. For some of our larger corporations across the state, on-site childcare has become a reality. So again, that is something that we should be continuing to look at as we move forward. So I've just gotten the results from the poll, and as you will see, there are definitely a lot of similarities between this group. The first question: if you could choose, which one of the following workplace benefits would be valuable to you? Number one, health insurance at 70%. Number two, paid family leave for mothers and fathers as well. I think that's a very important distinction. And three, flexibility so you can take care of your family needs. Second question, if you could choose, which of the following workplace benefits would inspire loyalty to you? The top response was flexibility so you can take care of your family needs. And I think an important conversation we're going to have in the workplace post-pandemic, and it's something we're having here at the Children's Movement, is what does the workplace look like? And I think this is an important conversation that corporations need to be having regarding remote work hours and flexibility. And finally, if you could choose, which of the following workplace benefits would promote productivity for you? Again, not surprising, flexibility at 42%. So again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this poll. We're going to be continuing this poll in the week to come, and we will be distributing the results on our website. I hope all of you have a chance to review it, because I think what we're going to get from this survey, a lot of organizations do surveys to sort of gauge, is there support for early childhood? And I don't think that's the right question to ask, because universally we've seen across the country that there is support for early childhood. What we're trying to find out is what are the pragmatic approaches we can take as individuals, as organizations, as corporations that can support children and families. And I think this survey will give us much needed data, much needed information coming really directly from parents and employees about what they need to be productive, efficient, and loyal to their corporations.